Hey, checking in with All Our Relations by Tanya Diagla, an Anish, oh boy, Anisnabi, a Canadian journalist, author, uh, reporter, journalist, has worked at the Toronto Star, has been pounding it out with some really, what seem like really highly respected books. This, All Our Relations, I picked up because on audiobook because it was free at Audible. So I was like, hey, literally do not have to do anything to pay, to get this fairly short book, five and a half hours long, which is one of the books. It's a nonfiction book that's basically kind of tackling a super high suicide rate amongst Indigenous people within Canada, within Indigenous peoples throughout the world. And, it's one of these things that I've been reading a lot about Indigenous peoples' history, literature, and stuff like that in the last little bit. And this is kind of just further filling in of a really fucking dire situation of basically indigenous communities where suicide is just a norm. It is something that is so common that it's something that's just sort of ever present as an option in a way. Um, and within within a thing where sexual abuse, the trauma of residential schools, which often included sexual abuse and physical abuse, and just basically stripping people of their culture, stripping people of any family supports, just the general fucking horrible history of Canada. And of the interesting thing about this book for me is also putting Canada to a certain degree in the context of places like Brazil, Australia, um, other places where Indigenous people have suffered very similar treatment. And the results have been quite similar as well. The high suicide rates, the problems with addiction, and mental health and all that stuff. A really stark thing of just like you select a group, you decide you put all this shit against them, and it's remarkably consistent what happens throughout the world to these groups. um, so it is a short book. It does kind of she's it's mostly centered in her experience in Canada, with a more of kind of interviewing people from other communities around the world for kind of to give you kind of like, hey, and this is happening other places, like that the Métis in our country were not given any land and ended up living in basically all the kind of like just up against the First Nations thing, or on the roadsides, basically anywhere that it wasn't officially somebody else's land because they had none of their own. And looking at is very similar stuff that is happening with Indigenous people in Brazil right today, who are being slowly and determinedly uh, uh, exterminated by the governments there. Which is not obviously not to claim any higher ground for the fucking my government, the people that I am a part of, who have very systematically done the exact same thing to Native, Indigenous people, Métis people in my country. So it is definitely. It feels like it's a book to try and educate the wider society and say, hey, what the fuck, what the fuck, how can we let this continue on? Um, you know, all the many wonderful reports that get produced with multiple recommendations and go unfulfilled, then are ignored because obviously they don't fit with the interests of the dominant society, while these groups are killed or killed. um, and their land, the land that we hope, our world is getting slowly just denuded and exterminated as well. This is I've been listening to David Attenborough's book, uh, a life on our planet's life. I can't even remember what the hell the name of this right now, but um, painting a very bleak picture of exactly what we've done to our environment, and very much in that comes that how we've exterminated the people who were actually there before, who were actually doing a fairly decent job of holding things down, and a part of that having to do with how their societies were structured, which we really didn't value. And there's definitely an argument to be made that, the common thread with a lot of these indigenous people's treatment is that we've come in with a very kind of the capitalist exploitative mindset and mowed them all down and mowed down the land that they that they had such a good and actually healthy connection to. So yeah, that's how far I'm about 2/3 of the way through it by now. So it's going quickly. I think I have like an hour. It was like 5 hours, and I have like maybe an hour and a bit left. Um, and oh boy, one of the most prolific pedophiles in Canada, preying on Indigenous people, has ended up living on Vancouver Island, Lake Cowichan. Just great to know. Great to know. And important to know. Important to know. Not complaining, just sad. Sad to know. Somebody who spent a very few years in jail for his crimes and is now demanding a healing circle. And that he was accused unjustly of hundreds of crimes. It's like, yeah. All right. More videos later.